Do you know who I never asked for anything? Was Jeffrey Epstein.
You raised the question of Jeffrey Epstein in your remarks about in the Q&A.
Well, I think he's got a problem.
Melinda was concerned about a relationship you had with Jeffrey Epstein.
In 2015, I started seeing reports online, things on my Twitter account that I had flown to this guy Jeffrey Epstein's island and I had abused young girls. And I was like, I mean, if you'd asked me in 2015, maybe even if you'd asked me in 2002, did I know a guy named Jeffrey Epstein? I probably would have said no. Well, of course, I have since learned who he is. And I have since been able to go back and find out that the airplane that we flew on for this humanitarian mission was owned by Jeffrey Epstein. And to then learn, oh, he was actually on some of those flights. And this Maxwell woman was on some of those flights. I didn't know him. I've never spent any time with him. I was with the Clinton Foundation people. That's who I was with. Now, what I understand is that he didn't start to be investigated until 2005 by authorities in Florida. So here's what I can tell you. This Maxwell woman, she was one of many people who sat down next to me in that throne room. I have no relationship with her. I had no relationship with him. I mean, he's not my friend. I'm not a confidant. I've never spent time with him. And interestingly, I will say this. I was very fortunate that President Clinton introduced me a lot of business leaders in London because he knew I was coming to the Old Vic. And I developed relationships with Robert Earl, Pula Ladobovich, Robert Earl, a lot of wonderful people, Sir Richard Caring, people who supported the work that we did at the Old Vic and gave money to us. Do you know who I never asked for anything? Was Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't want to be around this guy because I felt he put the president at risk on that trip to South Africa because there were these young girls. And we were like, who is this guy?
All right, Greg, what do you got?
So there's a speech pattern shift here, and he's really got to tell you the story. And it's not going to be storytelling quite the same way the rest of it was. He's got to get this out and get it across that I didn't have anything to do with Epstein. But his story logic starts to fall apart. Forget, I don't know how big the plane is, if it's a 747. Anybody else wonder why Clinton's traveling on a private plane to do government business? Number one, for me, I'm sure the Secret Service is involved. That we probably don't want to know all the answers. But even when his message was congruent and he was telling a story about something earlier, his body language wasn't as big, so it didn't look like it needed to convince you of things. This looks awfully big to me. Now, I'll just leave that part at that. After that first rambling thing we talked about with the chaff and redirect, he says she wasn't my friend, I didn't know her.
This Maxwell woman, she was one of many people who sat down next to me in that throne room. I have no relationship with her. I had no relationship with him.
This whole fail logic piece is not that. It's where there were these young girls.
There were these young girls. And we were like, who is this guy?
If there's young girls on a plane and you think they were compromising for Clinton, then fundamentally you knew something was up. Why would you not ask, who's that guy? But he didn't ask who's that guy. Only later does he come back and have a logic flaw that says, I didn't like him because he brought these young girls on. The young girls would be the red flag, not this guy you don't know. I mean, look, we all know somebody who has an entourage that's a lot bigger than we are. We don't meet everybody's in the room with them when we go there. We all deal with that. That's possible. We are on a plane and the guy comes up and he's got a bunch of young girls with him. Now you're going, wait, what's that? There's a logic gap here, and only in listening to him talk do you get that. So Piers does a great job of not interrupting him, let him talk. This is entirely different than his behavior during the groping accusation or any of that.
I have caressed people. I have been gentle with people. That is the way that I am. You're making a pass at someone. You don't want to be aggressive.
He was clear. He had a linear progression to his thought process. It's not here. It's gone. This doesn't make sense and makes me really want to lean over and say, how'd you know he was endangering Bill Clinton? If you didn't know who he was, how'd you know? That was 2002, 2003, 2005. When did this happen? Oh, yeah, there were girls on the plane? Yeah, there were girls on the plane. How'd you leave that out when you were telling me the story about going to Africa and all that? You're not going to tell me unless I ask you. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, if somebody inappropriately maybe posted on his Twitter without him wanting them to do that, I at least hope that it was gentle and caressing. But here's how this story goes. Here's how this clip goes. I've never heard of him.
I mean, if you'd asked me in 2015, maybe even if you'd asked me in 2002, did I know a guy named Jeffrey Epstein? I probably would have said no.
He was on the plane.
The airplane that we flew on for this humanitarian mission was owned by Jeffrey Epstein. And to then learn, oh, he was actually on some of those flights.
Didn't know who they really were.
I didn't know him. I've never spent any time with him. This Maxwell woman, she was one of many people who sat down next to me in that throne room. I have no relationship with her. I had no relationship with him.
He had lots of girls on the plane or elsewhere.
There were these young girls.
He was a risk to the Clintons, so I didn't ask him for anything.
Do you know who I never asked for anything? Was Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't want to be around this guy because I felt he put the president at risk.
And finally, but I've never heard of him even after the events happened. I've never heard of him, is how this clip starts out. He uses distancing language for this guy, Jeffrey Epstein.
I had flown to this guy, Jeffrey Epstein's island. I didn't want to be around this guy. Who is this guy?
This Maxwell woman.
And this Maxwell woman was on some of those flights. This Maxwell woman, she was one of many people who sat down next to me in that throne room.
Distancing language. Only time that he does that. Only time. When he's making denials about how close he and Epstein were, there's an unusual increase in blink rate. There's an increase in oxygen demand. So if you've subscribed to us for a while, you know what it means when someone breathes faster. But this is not an increase in breathing rate, but increases in the depth of breaths, taking way more deep breaths going on. And he's adding authority figures in the end of the clip here to bring credibility to the story, I think.
And I developed relationships with Robert Earl, Pula Ladobovich, Robert Earl, a lot of wonderful people, Sir Richard Caring.
I'm not saying there's a huge relationship here, but something in this behavior is absolutely off about these denials. And I'm talking about the relationship between Epstein. Something's off. Just the denials about the proximity of their relationship. And the plane that Epstein used was a Boeing 727. If you've seen the inside of one of these, you know, especially a private one, you know that it's very intimate, and there is no way to avoid anyone on these planes, especially the person who owns it. And if you can imagine 12 people inside of a hotel room that only has a couple couches and chairs, then imagine them all inside that hotel room for 7 or 8 hours straight going across the Atlantic Ocean. Getting to know people would be inevitable if you're even remotely social, and traveling with the Clinton family would almost require it. That's all I got. Scott?
Hey panelists, quick intro. I want you to meet Jess, our sponsorship specialist. Hey Jess.
Hi Mark.
Jess, thanks for letting me do this. I just Googled your full name. Now, is your address Los Angeles?
Yes.
And your phone number 214-428.
Where are you finding all this information?
Yeah, see, that's the scary part. Your personal info, address, phone, email is out there for anyone to find. All I did was just Google search, and it's not a hack. It's data brokers, companies that collect and sell your information to marketeers, scammers, even identity thieves. And yes, it's totally legal and totally creepy. They're supposed to remove your info if you ask, but they bury that in legalese and red tape, hoping you just give up. Or you can do what we do, which is use Aura, today's sponsor. Aura scans the web for data brokers, sharing your info, and automatically sends opt-out requests on your behalf. Just give it a few days and your personal data starts vanishing from those sketchy sites. But Aura doesn't stop there. It monitors the dark web 24/7 and alerts you fast if your info shows up. It'll warn you if someone tries to open a bank account or credit line in your name. And if something does go wrong, you're covered with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance and a US-based fraud team ready to step in. Plus, Aura includes a world-class VPN so you can browse and shop safely from anywhere. It's privacy, protection, and peace of mind all in one. So go to aura.com/TBP and get 14 days free. That's enough time for Aura to start scrubbing your personal info from the internet. Thanks again, Jess. And now back to the show.
Yeah, he starts that distancing by calling him this guy right out of the gate when he comes out of there. And I think that we're actually seeing real acting here. And that's why it looks so fake. Because when we see acting like that, like we're seeing here, it's in a movie, other people are acting like that as well. So you accept it. It's no problem at all. And he's a great actor. And he is a great actor, don't get me wrong. But this is acting in there. So quite often all of us get asked, if there's an actor, like we were talking about, somebody was on here talking about earlier, maybe it was Chase. If somebody is an actor, can they lie to you in an interrogation? You wouldn't know? No. And this is why. You're seeing a great example of it because it looks like acting every time. So when he answers the first part, he looks away, which gives peers and the audience permission to see him be confused and to be frustrated and understand, what now? That kind of thing. So that's really bad acting there as well. At the end, he tries to make it sound like everybody was against this creepy guy. What's his name? Epstein.
We were like, what? Who is this guy?
So he makes it look like he's not the only one, but everybody was doing that. Everybody felt that way. And one thing that made me think that he spent a lot more time with him than he's saying he did, because he said than the one or two times, he says,
do you know who I never asked for anything? Was Jeffrey Epstein.
Why would you be in a position to ask him for anything? And especially somebody you don't know, have never been introduced to. Why would you ask him anything? Why would that even come up? So I think he went a little bit too far on his list of things. He had to check that off, and he'd been through it so much and just kept trying to remember what he was saying. I think he must have left something out that would go before that, because that just makes him look goofy. That doesn't work. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I wish I could square the logic on this one, but it's unsquareable. And what's lovely for me is he starts off this whole piece with the frame of
and interestingly,
he says, which is very kind of Prince Andrew, ironically, and interestingly. Well, no, we're interested in all of this. Not a part of this is more interesting than another part. Why do you want me to focus on this as being the interesting part? Like, you've gone deep into this, so I don't have to, because you've gone, this is very interesting what happened here. So I've looked very closely at this. Don't you look any closer. It's illogical. He starts with,
did I know a guy named Jeffrey Epstein? I probably would have said no.
Probably. Like, it's yes or no that you probably say no. There's an option for a possibility of yes, you did know him. But okay, let's go with the no. Let's go with the no that you didn't know him.
I felt he put the president at risk on that trip to South Africa because there were these young girls, and we were like, what? Who is this guy?
So hang on, you think the president is at risk? So you probably and everybody's going, who is this guy? It's the guy who owns the plane. So Chase, yeah, you will know. Like, the guy who owns the plane will probably make themselves very, very clear and apparent. And for every private jet that I've been on, I'm very grateful for the person who owns the jet. Like, if you can find that person and go, oh, thanks very much for the jet, that's fantastic. You will do that kind of thing, because most people on the planet don't have a jet. They just don't. They just don't have one. When you find one who does, and you're flying in their jet, you shake, and you might end up shaking the wrong hand. I mean, that might be the case, that you realize, oh, damn, like, this guy's trafficking, or, whatever they're doing. So, yes, it doesn't make any sense. Nothing that he says here makes any sense. He can't square this circle that's very clear to everybody going on here, that if you're on a private jet with Jeffrey Epstein and he's got young girls with him, you'd know that. And yes, you should be suspicious. And from my point of view, I don't care who I'm going to offend. If I see something, I'm going to say something, because the worst that happens is somebody goes, no, actually, they are literally my daughters, and you've got the wrong idea here, mate. And I would say, I'm sorry. Thank you for setting me straight. I just like to check these things out, because you never know. I would not want to ever not say something. If I would rather that you are offended by me than this slips through my fingers. But no, he clearly said nothing because he's worried about the optics of that. Well, it's got him in a bit of a mess now.
In 2015, I started seeing reports online, things on my Twitter account, that I had flown to this guy Jeffrey Epstein's island and I had abused young girls. And I was like, I mean, if you'd asked me in 2015, maybe even if you'd asked me in 2002, did I know a guy named Jeffrey Epstein? I probably would have said no. Well, of course, I have since learned who he is, and I have since been able to go back and find out that the airplane that we flew on for this humanitarian mission was owned by Jeffrey Epstein. And to then learn, oh, he was actually on some of those flights. And this Maxwell woman was on some of those flights. I didn't know him. I've never spent any time with him. I was with the Clinton Foundation people. That's who I was with. Now, what I understand is that he didn't start to be investigated until 2005 by authorities in Florida. So here's what I can tell you. This Maxwell woman, she was one of many people that sat down next to me in that throne room. I have no relationship with her. I had no relationship with him. I mean, he's not my friend. I'm not a confidant. I've never spent time with him. And interestingly, I will say this. I was very fortunate that President Clinton introduced me a lot of business leaders in London because he knew I was coming to the Old Vic. And I developed relationships with Robert Earl, Pula Ladobovich, Robert Earl, a lot of wonderful people, Sir Richard Caring, people who supported the work that we did at the Old Vic and gave money to us. Do you know who I never asked for anything? Was Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't want to be around this guy because I felt he put the president at risk on that trip to South Africa because there were these young girls. And we were like, who is this guy?
I say that Epstein died and they should take their disappointment and upset out on the authorities that allowed that to happen. And that, as I said, I hope that they have some closure by the judicial process that took place. And I wish them time to heal and to be able to have a productive and good life going forward. And that's what I hope for them.
And this is what she had to say when she was asked, if you win your appeal, do you think you'll be accepted again by the very people who were once your friends?
Well, I can't know what my friends will do or won't do. I mean, my focus won't be on that. I will always turn to what I've now decided that will form the rest of my life, which is helping other people who are or have been incarcerated.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, guys, there is a grief muscle here, but not in the right places. Listen to her words and look for where the emphasis should be. Most of the emphasis is on, hey, Epstein's dead. I'm not part of that. That's all over with. You should be okay.
Epstein died and they should take their disappointment and upset out on the authorities that allowed that to happen.
Epstein died and they should be upset with the people who allowed him to die, not the process, none of that. And then the whole court thing, all this stuff she says is with internal voice. It should be with emotion. If you're feeling any remorse, if you're feeling any sorrow for these people whose lives have been wrecked. Now, maybe she doesn't think they've been wrecked, don't know. But her grief muscle engages this grief muscle, this arch right here, when she addresses time to heal and good life going forward.
Wish them time to heal and to be able to have a productive and good life going forward.
Wonder why? I don't know. There's a new adapter at her throat and even maybe at the suprasternal notch, but also under her clothes adapting. Whatever she's saying there is very hard for her to say. She's trying to get something out. I don't see remorse, but I also realize there's a fine line to walk when you're admitting guilt or expressing sorrow. You got to be careful not to say, I'm sorry it happened because. If you do that, then when you get back, they're going to use it in court. So when she's asked about her friends is when we see the same exact thing that Clinton brought out in her.
There's a broad range of knowledge on the world.
That gastric distress.
Which is helping other people.
That ducking of the chin, and that arch in the forehead. Does this mean that she perceives Clinton and the rest of her friends as having let her down? Or does she perceive that she's not going to be let back in, or that the people that she relies on to get her out of this bind are not there? Likely, when you see two of the same thing, exactly the same thing, something's going on. I'll just leave it at that and say, Scott, what do you got?
All right. This is where we're hearing true vocal fry for the first time.
And that, as I said, I hope that they have some closure by the judicial process that took place.
And she's watching her words, and she's being very careful here. And after her friend asks her the question, or is talking, then we see her, like you were saying, Greg, she's guarding that reaction. She's breathing a little bit more heavily here. And I think she still hasn't come down from that Bill Clinton question. And I think that's why we're seeing all the little things that are firing off from that. I think it's very similar to that. I'll leave it there. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, just a big reaction on what they should do.
They should take
the head reels back. I think there's a moment of disgust there as well. So really no empathy for the victims in this case. In fact, she does say they should take their disappointment out on the authorities that perhaps allowed the death of her former partner.
Take their disappointment and upset out on the authorities that allowed that to happen.
So it's kind of that blame the government, not me kind of situation. It's all the authorities' fault. It's nothing to do with me. I agree. There's that discomfort in the stomach again, that belch again around helping and other people, this not needing friends now, and now she's going to help people who are wrongly in prison like her. So there's a narrative there. There's a piece of branding going on here that I don't need friends anymore. I'm now a crusader to help the victims of wrongful imprisonment, just like myself. Let's all go and fight the system together. Chase, what do you got on this one?
I agree with you. And the whole time she's talking about becoming this pariah, she's using internal dialogue. Greg, to your point, where there's either just recalling something she's memorized or written, or coming up with words on the fly that sound good. That's when we see a lot of that eye movement. There's no emotion when talking about the people or the victims. The one time, which I think is the only time, we see her go into emotional eye movement, which is down and to a person's right, is right at this time she's thinking about her friends at home and how will they respond. And I think this might tell us more about her behavior profile than a lot of other indicators we've seen so far. But in real life, we would need to ask her probably a few more questions to ensure that this is a good hot point for her emotionally. But just with these available resources that we have, this is a big point for her. She gets emotional about how the friends will potentially react to her coming out. And that's all I got.
I say that Epstein died and they should take their disappointment and upset out on the authorities that allowed that to happen. And that, as I said, I hope that they have some closure by the judicial process that took place. And I wish them time to heal and to be able to have a productive and good life going forward. And that's what I hope for them.
And this is what she had to say when she was asked, if you win your appeal, do you think you'll be accepted again by the very people who were once your friends?
Well, I can't know what my friends will do or won't do. I mean, my focus won't be on that. I will always turn to what I've now decided that will form the rest of my life, which is helping other people who are or have been incarcerated.
I don't know because I don't know her, but it was nasty.
You raised the question of Jeffrey Epstein in your remarks about in the Q&A.
Well, I think he's got a problem. I mean,
what do you think the problem will be?
I don't know, but that island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew. He'll tell you about it. The island was an absolute cesspool. So,
the Clintons are friends
and he's
of
been
yours,
there
right?
for many times.
The Clintons are friends.
Well, I can't say friends, but I know
You're
them.
friendly. You know them.
They play at my clubs a lot. I have clubs, and everybody likes to play at my clubs.
Are you saying there's a political problem for her if she runs for president?
It could be a political problem. Look, he could be a political problem. Right now, he's Teflon, and right now, maybe not. But he could end up being a political problem.
That's one question. Al, talk to us about comments.
All right. Right out of the gate, what I'm seeing with this one is when he mentions Epstein, he gets that big, deep breath.
Remarks about
because he's getting ready. I'm sure he's loaded for bear on this one. But the thing that got me was when he brought up Prince Andrew. Did you see what he was doing? He's looking at that guy, Al, across the thing.
Just ask Prince Andrew.
His eyebrows go up and they come in like, dude, we know what's happening there. Almost like they're trading a shits and giggles joke there, or something they both know that nobody else knows. That's when I said, holy smoke, something's up there. Because when he says Prince Andrew, and he looks, it just dead eyes that guy, and he does that little smile, and he goes into a complete Duchesne smile. It's small, but it's there. It's complete. Everything you look for in that is there, and it lasts for a second. That's the one that I saw that I thought was awesome. Yeah, so that's all. I just want to make sure and point that out. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it's even bigger. I think when I see it starts with amusement, but then it erupts to a full-blown Duchesne smile, and his face almost lights up. It goes to the center of his face. He's got eye contact. And I think he's actually saying more than those two people know that Prince Andrew knows some things that he shouldn't know. And I think if I'm Prince Andrew and I see this, I'm like, why didn't I buy that video and destroy that? Because this doesn't look good for him. His brow rises, his eyes smirk. He stops for a second when they ask about Epstein. His hand stops illustrating.
Remarks about in the Q&A.
Well, I think he's got a problem. I mean,
what do you think the problem will be?
I don't know, but that island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it.
And I'm sure he's thinking, what's the next question? But when the question comes back, he starts then to use, to your point, Chase, his positive hand to illustrate again, because it's not about him. It's about somebody else. He's doing that request for approval a little bit as he's trying to fish out the guy across the room from him to get him engaged. We use our brow to fish out cooperation or recognition, and he's doing that as he pulls his brow up, looking to see. Guaranteed the other guy's brow rose too. We couldn't see it, and then his goes back to some kind of normal. That's what I had.
Excellent. Chase, what do you got?
So with that eyebrow flash, if you're watching this right now, nobody's looking at you except for us. Go ahead and try to make an angry facial expression. What does it do to your eyebrows? It pulls them down and together. And as primates, when we do the opposite of anger, that's how we gain agreement with other primates. We'll naturally do the opposite of it. And if you want to try this as an experiment, the next time you're at Starbucks or you're getting your groceries or something, raise your eyebrows and do what's called the eyebrow flash at the cashier or whoever as you're introducing yourself. And about 85 to 90% of people will return the eyebrow flash with no memory that they did it or no awareness that they returned it at all. So that's just a fun trick you can play.
You do it every time you see somebody you know, every time.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I noticed here that I thought was very noteworthy, that this is the only time that anyone who's been photographed with Epstein hasn't distanced or softened the severity of what was going on. He very openly calls it a cesspool.
That island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it.
For you guys that don't know, a lot of people don't know this, but Trump loves adverbs and adjectives. I think everybody knows that.
Bigly.
Yeah, it was a cesspool. But he loves to repeat those words. Whenever he thinks he's got a good little hook that just kind of came out randomly, he'll do it 3 or 4 more times. But I thought that was remarkable that he didn't soften the severity of it. He didn't say, well, it's a interesting place down there. It's really bad, or they've got some stuff going on down there. And people who are guilty, just as a quick tip, tend to soften that. Instead of saying murder, they'll say hurt. Instead of saying steal, they'll say take. Instead of saying sexually assault, they'll say interfere with. So we'll hear a lot of those softening things with guilty people. And I thought that was remarkable to hear that. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so utter delight. He's delighted that this whole subject comes up. I think that's what we see there, Scott, for sure, is that big intake is like, I'm going to need a lot of oxygen for this because I got a lot of stuff in my brain that I need to get out around this. So, and I think it's worth noticing, often people do talk about these in-breaths or sniffs that he does. Again, that's normal for him. People put it down to anything from a deviated septum to drugs, depending on, where their bias is. But ultimately, what we do know is that those long intakes or short ones are a classic for him. One extra thing, because I concur with everything that's said there, especially that Duchenne smile and that twinkle in his eye as that comes up, pure delight, is his ability to say the exact opposite of his opening statement close on. So right now it may be a problem and right now it may not.
Look, he could be a political problem. Right now he's Teflon and right now maybe not.
It's a great example. Right now it may be a problem and right now it may not. It's a brilliant ability already as a politician to be able to say the exact opposite in the same sentence as you say the pro statement. So again, watch out for that, because that is not abnormal for him to be able to argue with himself in the same sentence. And it's useful in politics when you're having to try and serve everybody.
Excellent.
I don't know because I don't know her, but it was nasty.
You raised the question of Jeffrey Epstein in your remarks about in the Q&A.
Well, I think he's got a problem. I mean,
what do you think the problem will be?
I don't know, but that island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew. He'll tell you about it. The island was an absolute cesspool. So,
the Clintons are friends
and he's
of
been
yours,
there
right?
for many times.
The Clintons are friends.
Well, I can't say friends, but I know
You're friendly. You know them.
They play at my clubs a lot. I have clubs, and everybody likes to play at my clubs.
Are you saying there's a political problem for her if she runs for president?
It could be a political problem. Look, he could be a political problem. Right now, he's Teflon, and right now, maybe not. But he could end up being a political problem.
I want to ask one question. Al, talk to us about
He was your guest as well. In 2000, Epstein was a guest at Windsor Castle and at Sandringham. He was brought right into the heart of the royal family at your invitation.
But certainly at my invitation, not at the royal family's invitation. But remember that it was his girlfriend that was the key element in this. He was the, as it were, plus one to some extent. In that.
Chase, what do you got?
This video is a classic example of selling instead of telling. And his behavior starts right away with the submissive interjection, trying to get his point across.
Part of the royal family at your invitation.
But this submissive behavior is very outside of his normal baseline. And when he says key element...
Remember that it was his girlfriend that was the key element in this.
This is indicative of the phrases somebody writes down or is briefed before a trial or deposition. And you see even more selling when he takes this confused look to share his uncertainty about the definition of a plus one, just so he can kind of get some agreement from the other person. And this is backed up with this classic upward tone.
He was the, as it were, plus one to some extent.
And he even does a little of what Greg calls taffy pulling, where he's kind of pulling her along to get some agreement there. And as a quick side note, if anybody's ever hung out with Epstein and then goes on TV and they don't talk about how repulsive that behavior is or how disgusted they are by it, that should be a gigantic red flag all on its own. And that should tell you almost all you need to know. That's all I got. Greg?
Yeah, let's start with how poorly his message has aged. In the beginning, this message was about, I'm not Epstein's friend, I'm Ghislaine's friend.
Remember that it was his girlfriend.
Well, she's in prison now, so that didn't age well. And if he thought that was a great defense, he's in trouble for that. He alternates between confusion, that's these muscles in the middle gathering, and request for approval, holding his brow up as he tells a story. And Chase, you're right, he's pulling. He's trying to get that fishing thing going. He's fishing for approval. He makes way too much eye contact. And the reason the taffy pulling thing happens is because you keep your eyes connected and turn your head. It's an odd kind of a request for approval. But yeah, his message certainly didn't age well, and this will be an interesting one. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so hang on, submissive. I mean, I went on the internet and I saw that it says, if people are getting good eye contact, that means they're pretty positive, they're pretty confident. Well, that's true until it absolutely isn't. And in this case, it absolutely isn't. Chase is absolutely right there, of course. Because if you look at his baseline, what he tends to do in interviews where he's not on the hot plate and he's really able to play that status that he has at this point, which is Vice Admiral, pretty high up in the Royal Navy there, and he's a royal at the same time, is he won't give any eye contact at all while he's listening to other people's questions. He won't give any eye contact at all while he's giving an answer. He'll just flash his eyes now and again to really put an emphasis on specific parts of his answer. Here, he locks a lot of eye contact. Just as Chase says, he takes up space with that but. He's literally fighting for his territory right now. And that's displayed in the way he takes up space with his words and with his eye contact there. He is on the hot plate here, and this is very out of character for him. Scott, what have you got on this one?
I agree with you, Mark, wholeheartedly, because what he's doing there at the top is he's using not only the trying to speak as a regulator, he's using the but he's also got that look of concern on his face. So in a way, he's using his expression and his words as a regulator. Regulators are the things you use to speed up or slow down a conversation or stop them. And those are usually done with your hands and sometimes with your head. But in this case, it's mostly facial expressions and what he's saying at that time. And while he's doing this, his head goes down and starts guarding his neck because he feels, I think, he's under the impression there's going to be some stress here because he's not being honest about this, as we know. He throws the thing over to, like Greg was saying, over to his girlfriend, Ghislaine, and says he was just a +1 with her. So, and he separates himself from the royal family when he does the illustrator, coming in like this, and then he says the royal family. Makes them bigger and away from him. So he knows he's got to separate himself from them because there's trouble there.
He was your guest as well. In 2000, Epstein was a guest at Windsor Castle and at Sandringham. He was brought right into the heart of the royal family at your invitation.
But certainly at my invitation, not at the royal family's invitation. But remember that it was his girlfriend that was the key element in this. He was the, as it were, +1 to some extent.
The New York Times and Wall Street Journal both reported in recent months that Melinda was concerned about a relationship you had with Jeffrey Epstein, who at the time you met him in 2011 had been already convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor. The Times reported she hired divorce attorneys around the time in October 2019 when that contact with Epstein became public. Can you explain your relationship with Epstein? Did you have any concerns? Was there ever any concerns you had about it?
Oh, certainly. I had several dinners with him, hoping that what he said about getting billions of philanthropy for global health through contacts that he had might emerge. When it looked like that wasn't a real thing, that relationship ended. But it was a huge mistake to spend time with him, to give him the credibility of, being there. There were lots of others in that same situation, but I made a mistake.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, so starting off, he's got that resting positive face again. He starts off there and then he's internalizing the question. You'll see him looking kind of down to his left as he starts to predict what's coming. That's that internal voice again, Chase, that you're talking about. When a person drops over into their lower left, they're typically internalizing or having an internal conversation. As soon as he starts to realize, hey, this is where this is going, this is the New York Times, he chews the inside of his lip just a touch, which indicates anxiety. His breathing goes up. His eyes go everywhere but the camera, which is not like him, by the way. And then, like I say, his blink rate is up for him. It's not really high compared to a lot of other people. I always talk about mood, meaning the canvas you paint on with all the rest of your body language, as being based on energy, direction, and focus. In this case, his energy is low. His focus is very sharp. It's all, he's moving his eyes around, but it's very internal. And all of that energy is going to internal. I count that embarrassment. Usually when a person has low energy, sharp focus, and internal, then I think of that as embarrassment. And then just before he answers, if you slow the video down, There's an eye close, and he blocks at his eyes. And then his energy goes back up. His cadence shift goes there. That shoulder goes again, but I think we all know that, that's kind of his thing, is he bobs his shoulders when he's talking. And then he goes on to answer. What's interesting about this is I don't see a lot of grief or any of that kind of stuff in his face when he's answering the question. And he's answering the question legitimately saying, hey, I screwed up, basically is what he says. So we'll go from there. Chase, what do you got?
I think what's interesting to see here is that Anderson Cooper's blink rate is higher than Gates throughout the entire clip. And Gates' breathing shifts from his abdomen down here up into his chest right away when he starts hearing the subject of the question. If you look at a baby human sleeping or a sleeping animal, their abdomen will rise and fall and not the chest. So we typically breathe into the chest once we're feeling more stress. While Gates is processing the question, he performs a TDS, or transderivational search. You'll see the eyes move in many, many different directions. And this is very useful for salespersons, interrogators, or a TV interviewer, because vague language does two very specific things to us. Number one, it causes a lack of certainty. And number two, it causes the person to use their own beliefs and memories to fill the gaps in consistency and language. And the shoulder shrugging we're seeing throughout is simply what we're always talking about. It's his baseline. But he socializes the situation.
There were lots of others in that same situation, but I made a mistake.
But he does own the mistake. He does not socialize the mistake. He uses the word, I made a mistake. So Gates, his blink rate's at like 71, and then it decreases to 40, and then at the end of the video, it's around 24. Once he, A, is knowing that he's going to get through this, and B, I think he is more on message and he knows what he's going to deliver. And I just think that it's pretty honest and pretty forthright. Scott?
All right. He scoots up just as the questions finishes up. He scoots up. He does this quite a few times. We see it in the following videos as well, because he's sort of bracing himself, because this is a biggie right here. And his answer is, he's got the idea of the answer, but I don't think he's ever said it out loud. And one of the reasons you know that is because it's a little quieter. His tone is low, not just his volume, and it just sounds awkward coming through there. And as he's asking the question, as you listen to it, you can see the corners of his mouth slowly go down and down and down as he goes through that, as it's registering what's happening, that this question is being asked. Again, his shoulder pop increases a whole lot. And like you were saying, Chase, he's breathing a lot deeper and a lot heavier at this point. Not that he's in a panic. I think it's tough to get this guy at this point panicked. He's not showing any of the things that would show panic, for me anyway, up to this point. And he ends up with that finished mouth. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I think I agree. Like, we see an uptick in the blink rate, and then it decreases quite dramatically. Anderson Cooper knows it. He knows it. This is the hot spot of the interview around this area. So, there's just that excitement. I don't think pleasurable excitement, but there's an excitement around here's the moment that everybody's waiting for. Now, what do we get? I think we get him using his moderation countermeasures, and that's why we get the shoulders popping around. We don't get anything outside of his baseline. I think what we get is just some really good modern spin on this, which is,
I made a mistake.
So just as you said there, Chase, I agree. He totally owns that. We get the elongation on others.
There were lots of others.
So there is a deflection out to, look, I'm not the only one. Others made this mistake as well. They thought this guy was a legitimate route to philanthropy. I think what's most interesting about this is that people will tend to go, yeah, but hang on, if there's the behavior of this person being one of the most successful people on the planet, I mean, arguably, an incredible innovator, an incredible business builder, How come they can make such an awful mistake? How can you have both of those things? That's the thing that people find difficult to I guess, square that circle. There is in autism spectrum, and again, I'm not sure where he is, but there's some strong possibilities he's somewhere on that. Within that, you can have huge differentials in skill set, where you have somebody who is savant at one thing, I mean, just unbelievably brilliant at one thing, and totally inept at another, and being able to tell, socially what is right or wrong or true or false can be really, really difficult, and the low end of the skill set to somebody who is brilliant at creating things, building things, technically managing things. And I think that's always difficult for us when we see somebody who is brilliant at something and then they fail miserably at something else. Well, we want to create a nefariousness. We want to create a problem. We want to create, something bad is going on, rather than just, hey, it's just a little bit of an edge of, for want of a better word, stupidity. It's just they're really smart at this and they're really not smart at this thing over here. I'm not saying he's either of those things. I'm just saying this is one of these situations where we always find it difficult to go, isn't it just the world where just somebody's really good at one thing, they really mess up in this thing over here? That's what he's saying.
Mark, one thing I would add is the bigger you are in life, the bigger your chances to really screw up. That's the thing. The guy who is the Walmart greeter, nothing wrong with that job, he's not going to get the same opportunities to screw up as Bill Gates. That's the other thing to think about.
Right.
The New York Times and Wall Street Journal both reported in recent months that Melinda was concerned about a relationship you had with Jeffrey Epstein, who at the time you met him in 2011 had been already convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor. The Times reported she hired divorce attorneys around the time in October 2019 when that contact with Epstein became public. Can you explain your relationship with Epstein? Did you have any concerns? Was there ever any concerns you had about it?
Oh, certainly. I had several dinners with him, hoping that what he said about getting billions of philanthropy for global health through contacts that he had might emerge. When it looked like that wasn't a real thing, that relationship ended. But it was a huge mistake to spend time with him, to give him the credibility of, being there. There were lots of others in that same situation, but I made a mistake.
Ask the Attorney General a question too, Mr.
Sure.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night set?
Yeah, sure. Could I just interrupt for a second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
If you watch, as soon as Trump says sure, he disengages. I don't think he expects this question. And then when we get this agent question again, look at Rubio's blank rate. It is through the roof. As Bondi sits listening, she telegraphs she isn't going to have an answer with a head shake. She's shaking her head no before she answers. And then that frozen smile we see on her face is her data intake face. It's her resting face we see in TV interviews. But you can see Trump's agitation build as a reporter finishes a question. You can see his lips purse. He sits back, he corrects his coat, and then he does a regulator. Can I have 1 second? When we say a regulator, we mean the person is controlling the conversation. He asks for permission, and then he does a whole body disbelief. Hands out and open, although they're welded at his sides, which we typically associate with not being truthful. They do rise. His fingers are extended. He's got disbelief in his brow.
condemning and contempt in the sides of his mouth. You can't miss that withdrawal of his mouth. Then his elbows move away from his side. And then in disbelief, as he shakes his head and his eye blocks, he was saying, would you ask this question in this setting? If you think it's scripted, I'll give you a reason I know it's not scripted. That doesn't mean that he's not protecting. That is because he searches down and left. If you watch his eyes go down left, he's looking for the word desecration.
Just seems like a desecration.
It's not prepared. So this is not a prepared thing he's gone in and done. But Trump is really good at doing the body language on the fly. I think if this is honest body language and he's prioritizing his mind over what he's talking about, this thing around the Texas issue and around all these good things he's done, I think his motivation is Trump motivation. And he just gets irritated by the question, comes out and goes with it. Does that mean they've not had internal conversations about how to deal with this? Certainly they have. Certainly they have. But does that mean they prepared for this one? I think this was a surprise question for him as you look at it, because the body language looks original and genuine. Chase, what do you see?
Yeah, as the question comes out about the intel agencies, there is a massive shift in the room. The blink rate of both Marco Rubio, who's the Secretary of State, and Pam Bondi, who's Attorney General, shoots through the roof. And this is what we mean when we say the body doesn't lie. No matter how locked down you get, things leak out. And just so you have some clarity on this, the more often we're blinking, the higher stress we're experiencing. And that is one of the most reliable stress indicators there is especially when you pair it with context, like there's something's changed. So if someone starts a conversation, they're blinking super fast, they might have allergies. There might be all kinds of stuff going on. This is a change, and it's in a very, very specific context. So there's something that you need to notice about this. This occurs not when the reporter mentions Jeffrey Epstein. It happens at the moment that relationships to intelligence agencies are mentioned.
Whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency.
And this is one of the most telling and revealing things I've seen in the news in a very long time. There should not be a massive spike in stress in relation to the intelligence agency link, but there is, and it is plain as day. There's even some unusual swallowing movement and fidgeting from President Trump here at this very moment. So there's some obvious deflection, and the deflection of like, oh, let's not talk about it. Let's talk about this other thing. I don't think you need an education on that. But you have to ask yourself, why would there be a massive spike in stress from two people who are well informed on all this and unusual deviations from baseline in the president the moment that intelligence agency involvement is mentioned? I'll let you be the judge, but this tells absolutely visible stress here and a large amount of it. And it's in three people at the same exact time. Mark, what do you got?
Interesting. Very interesting. Look, just like you, Greg, here's what I see from Trump. Shock, irritation, dismissal. And this is not just in the body language, but in the words that he's using as well. And especially when it comes to him taking a moral and ethical high ground at this point. He goes, this is a waste of time.
Do you want to waste the time and do you feel like answering?
And this is desecration.
Like a desecration.
And you're right, Greg, he searches for that word, and whether he's landed on that word not thinking about it properly, he lands on a very, very strong word at that point. And creates a highly emotional charged rhetorical attack on anybody who wants to investigate this further. Now, either he's comfortable with, therefore, the hypocrisy and the irony of him coming up with looking into this in the first place, and is comfortable with the irony and hypocrisy of now going, no, we got to walk that back. Now, anybody who wants to do this, it's a waste of time. They're time wasters and they're desecrators. Or he just doesn't remember that he did that in the first place. I don't know, or something else. But here's what I would say net of this. Politically, if you take that standpoint of saying that the people who are interested in this, if still interested, not only and wanting evidence, not only are they into watching videos of minors, but also they are the desecrators of the children in Texas. That is, you're riding a very fast horse with the people of your country if you call them names like that, especially as you're calling essentially your base that. It's a super fast horse that he's riding. Interesting for me to see whether he can stay on or not, because he's not ridden a horse like this before, I would say. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. So I think everything here for what we're seeing, for the positions they're in, everything looks normal. We're seeing stress spikes when we should be seeing them. And I think the reason, Chase, that Trump does that adjustment and all that is because he's like, I'm going to say something here. So he's sort of adjusting, getting ready to say that. That was the impression I got. Because you see people do that all the time. On here, Greg starts doing this, and Mark just kind of, that hand will go up, and he'll say that. Then Chase, you'll wait just a minute, and then you'll lean in and start talking. But you can see those little changes, Jess, because you're drawing attention to yourself for that reason. Look at me, I'm going to say something. That's the impression I got from seeing that. So everybody's levels are really high here, as they should be in this situation. But look, who's in the middle there? Who's sitting between them?
Marco.
Yeah, Rubio sitting, and watch how much he doesn't move. You just could have put a standee of him sitting in a chair looking that way. The cat doesn't do anything.
You got like 2 thumb movements out of him like this. That's
his eyes are doing all the work.
Yeah.
Blank rate is doing the work for him.
Yeah, he's all over that. But so, yeah, he's frozen because this is a big deal, everything going on here. And again, they know not just, there's more people watching this, there are more people watching this than were the one before this. So I think they're aware of that. So that's why everything is not stilted, but just everybody's so tense, it looks that way. And I think Trump drops into that classic Trump stuff where he sits up straight and gets those arms going like this. That's one of his biggest defensive and offensive at the same time battle moves. So every time he's in the middle of it with somebody, he starts that. So there's a lot going on here. There's a whole lot going on here.
Ask the Attorney General a question too, Mr. Trump.
Sure.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape?
Yeah, sure. Could I just interrupt for a second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration.
All right, fellas, thanks for another good one, and we'll see you next time.